I'm Dimitri from XYZ Create, and today I'll be making this TREX coin chomper.
I started this project off with a poplar board that measured 5.5 inches wide and 3/4 of an inch thick, and I measured out to 22.5 inches. I applied painter's tape to the bottom side of the board, and this is to help reduce tear out when I cut it to length. After lining up both of the boards, I could use the first board as a template to mark out where I need to cut the next board. The painter's tape helped out a lot. Just look at that clean line. I then glued the boards together using Type-On original wood glue, and this will give me a panel wide enough for the template that I'll be using later. It's important to apply enough pressure that you close any seams between the boards, but not so much that you start to bow them. I also made sure to clean up any glue squeeze out before it dried. After letting the board sit overnight, it was time to take it out of the clamps. I then cut out the template and I attached it to the boards using Super 77 spray adhesive. I cut off the excess wood and saved it to use in a future project. Using a jigsaw, I was able to cut the pieces free from one another. And this is where I found out I used way too much spray adhesive. Using double stick tape, I can temporarily attach the pieces together. Using my bandsaw, I was able to cut the pieces out. However, this is not the correct blade to be using. It is way too thick and in fact really dull. It did a lot more burning than it did cutting. I had originally planned on using my jigsaw to cut the pieces out. However, I found there was way too much blade deflection and it wasn't giving me a straight enough cut. Here's where I had the most difficulty, as the blade was way too thick to navigate in this tiny area. I was able to nibble away most of the material, however this just means a whole lot more work later on. Using every surface on my belt sander, I was able to get the cut down to the line. The sanders were great for most areas, however there's some spots where they just couldn't reach. For those, I used a file and good old-fashioned elbow grease. Uh-oh, looks like someone hasn't been flossing. With a 1/4 inch bit in my drill press, I could drill holes for dowels that'll be used for alignment. With the two halves separated, I can go ahead and mount the template that'll be used to route the coin slot, and I made sure to use just enough spray adhesive this time. I had originally planned on using my Dremel to route the coin slot, however when trying to set the depth on a test piece it kept shutting off on me, so I quickly switched over to a trim router. The route wasn't as clean as I would have liked, however this will be on the inside and will never be seen. This time around the template was removed much easier. The coin slot entrance was a little misaligned, but it was easy enough to clean it up with the file. In order to drill the hole in the same spot in both pieces, I realigned them using the dowels. Using a 3 5/64 inch hole saw, I could drill out the center hole from both of the pieces. To reduce tear out, I would drill about halfway through, flip the piece over, and then finish the hole from the other side. With the pieces still in half, I took this opportunity to paint the inside of the coin slot black, because it would be impossible to do later on. With the dowels in place, it's finally time to glue these two halves together permanently. After letting the piece sit overnight, it's finally time to take it out of the clamps. Using my Japanese flush cut saw, I trimmed the dowels flush with the top surface. Before I can move on to the next steps, I need to remove the rest of the stubborn template that I accidentally glued onto firmly. I gave the T-Rex its final sanding with 220 grit sandpaper. I also rounded off all the sharp edges for a smoother, more premium feel. And I used a makeshift sanding stick to get to those tough to reach areas. Off camera, I cut the arms for the T-Rex out of 1/4 inch poplar, and here you see me also applying a round over to them. Using an 1/8 inch drill bit, I drilled holes in the acrylic disc. Using the same pieces of acrylic as a template, I could drill out the 7/64 inch holes for the screws to mount into. I attached the arms to the rest of the body using wood glue. I also added a small dab of hot glue to keep them from shifting until I could add a proper clamp to them. After letting it sit for about an hour, I could remove it from the clamps and start painting. The paint I'm using is just regular green acrylic craft paint from the craft store. The paint goes on thin, but after about 3 coats, you're left with a nice opaque finish. I did about 3 coats of paint on all sides of the T-Rex. And one thing I want to point out is you need to make sure that the previous layer is dry before you start the next one, and you could always speed up the process with a hairdryer. After all the green acrylic paint was dry, I added 4 coats of a clear satin finish. Using a 1/4 inch wooden dowel, I outlined his eye and filled it in with a paintbrush. I also gave him some nostrils so he can breathe. And with the last screw tightened, this project was done.
I hope you guys had as much fun watching this video as I did making it, and I'd really appreciate if you guys would like, comment, share, and subscribe. Also, I'll go ahead and leave a link down in the description below where you can get a copy of the template I made. That'll do it for this one, and I'll see you guys next time.